we are looking at a passage in 2 Kings chapter 4, 37, which we will be reading shortly. But this is a mission season. But it's also today, as I begin this series, it also happens to be Mother's Day, and so I have chosen to begin this series with the topic, Mothers on a Mission. Mothers on a Mission. And I do hope that even the rest of us who are not mothers will somehow be able to apply something that we will pick from the scriptures. But of course, rather than limit ourselves to mothers, we shall take a broader perspective so that both mothers and mothers-to-be and mother supporters and fans of mothers, and those include husbands and their sons, that we can also participate in this session. But I would like to begin by defining what we're talking about, being a missional church. Talking about mission, being a missional church. Let me begin by defining, even before we come to the reading, what is a missional church? And I see a missional church, in the words of Dr. Michael A. Milton, a missional church is an ecclesial community of word, sacrament, and prayer, where pastoral staff, officers, and members are united in their commitment to the gospel-driven practice of the Great Commission of Jesus Christ in every area of ministry and life. I'll go back to that a little slowly. So we are talking about a missional church. We are saying it's an ecclesial community. An ecclesial community, the word ecclesia, basically is a gathering, is a group of people. So a missional church is an ecclesial community of the word of God, the sacraments that go along with an ecclesial community. Those would include things like Holy Communion, prayer. It would include things like prayer and fasting. It would include things like marriage and so on. Those are sacraments and prayer. And where the people in that church, whether they are staff, whether they are members, they are united together in their commitment to a gospel-driven practice. A gospel-driven practice of the Great Commission. The Great Commission, which we often pick up in Matthew 28. But sometimes it's just a statement and doesn't mean much to us. We are talking about a gospel-driven practice of that commission. That is a commission of Jesus Christ, and that should be demonstrated in every area of life and ministry. So, gospel-driven practice of the Great Commission. That is a missional church. And because we are talking about being a missional church in these few weeks that we'll be concentrating on that, I ask us to be very open and to hear God, what He might be saying. And towards the end of June, I would like us to rally ourselves to be a blessing to the Rendile community, where we have a ministry there, and we would like to build a church there. Our church there that gathers in a plot has found a church plot that will be leased. It doesn't belong to us, but will be leased. But in that leased plot, we can be there longer, and we want to put a semi-permanent building there, like the one we have at Engine. And so, as a way of applying what we will be looking at, I would like us to be a blessing to the Rendile people, and we'll be giving you more details. But please do prepare to make a special offering towards the end of June, so that we can build a sanctuary for the people among the Rendile where we serve. So, the word missional describes a church's foremost enterprise of pursuing a church foremost enterprise, in other words, undertaking where energies are given, but the church that I have described is pursuing the missio Dei, that is the mission of God in the world. So that missional church that we have described, that you belong to, your foremost enterprise, you put your energy and your resources and your thinking in the mission of God, which is described as the Missio Dei in the world. Because you and I are the representatives of God in this world, we pursue his mission has to do with the salvation of the world. Every believer, therefore, is sent in that context. Every believer is sent to a culture, in a community, in a country, and that church member, that is you and I, carry the cross, and we take the cross into a nation, Kenya. We take it into a community where you belong, and into a culture that needs to be illuminated with the gospel of Christ. So the missional church, therefore, must be aware of its socio-historical context. In other words, you and I must be aware of our neighborhood, where God has placed us, awareness. Then we must respond wisely in sharing the gospel of Jesus in that community in a way that will make an impact. So awareness, who is my neighbor? Which town do I belong to? Now we are talking about Marsabit, for instance. So who are our neighbors? What is the religion around there? What are the needs around there? How can I practice my Missio Dei, my mission of God in that community? And you and I are sent. So awareness is extremely important, and wise response to those around us. Alan Hirsch has defined a missional church as one that has a posture towards the world. A posture towards the world. Now, we know that we have been called out of the world. But when Jesus calls us out of the world, he calls us so that we can gather together like this, but then he sends us back. So, in fact, the ecclesia are the sent ones. We've been sent back. Therefore, although we have been called out of the world, we are still in the world, and our posture should be towards the world. But we need to clarify there that posture towards the world also appreciates that the world is sinful. And therefore our posture leaning towards the world, we only lean because we have a message to take to that world. If we lean without knowing that the world is sinful, then we will go into that world without a message and without anything to bring to the world. So, that in a nutshell is a definition of a missional lifestyle, a missional congregation that we seek to be. But now we are doing this in the context of Mother's Day, and so we turn to what we can call mothers and mission. Mothers and mission. Our text, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8 to 37. But I'll read just verse 4 up to verse 10 for now. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse number 8. One day, Elisha went to Shunem, and a well-to-do woman was there, who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. She said to her husband, I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put it in a bed, and a table, a chair, and a lamp for him. Then he can stay there whenever he comes to us. That is the word of the Lord, and we will read another text a little later. Whenever we talk about missions, it appears as if we are talking about masculine activities of traveling to difficult places where ladies will be uncomfortable and where they cannot raise their families. That's the general feeling sometimes. And so sometimes we feel missions would be for men. But I would like to correct that perspective, first of all, by appreciating that majority of missionaries in the world are actually women. And we give thanks to God that many women have braved tough times and they have become missionaries, cross-cultural missionaries. But the word mission and missions, as I look at it today, is not just about traveling and going to far places. And so on this Mother's Day, I would like us to open our minds a little more, all of us, to see a broader view of missions. And let's ask as ladies on this occasion, how can I be involved in the mission of God, the Missio Dei, as a woman in my current circumstances? And of course, the men will be asking, how can I be part of that? How can I support the women who are connected to me, and even those who are not connected to me, as they seek to fulfill God's Missio Dei in the world? Today we shall look at two women, and I will do that quickly. They were not missionaries in the missionary sense of the word, but we will learn a few lessons about their priorities from the way they lived their lives. And we begin with this woman who lived in a town called Shunem, and she is therefore just called the Shunammite woman. Here was a perceptive lady who was very generous. Now, I will basically describe the two stories of the two women as we pick lessons, and then towards the end, I will summarize those lessons. So if you miss them in the course of my discussion, you will find them at the end of my sermon. So here was a perceptive lady, very generous. Over time, she noted that there was a man, and this was a prophet. This was Elisha. And Elisha, just like his predecessor Elijah, used to do these prophetic circuits where he would travel from one place to the other, and he would go make sacrifices and be a blessing to a community. And this lady of Shunem observed from a distance this man, always passing, maybe every week or every month, whatever it was, and she perceived and will be saying that women on a mission are perceptive. Mothers on a mission are perceptive. She perceived that this man is a man of God. This man needs support and some help. And so she didn't just say, God bless him. She asked herself, in my situation as a woman, as one married in this place, what can I do to this man that I perceive to be a man of God? How can I participate in the mission that he is involved in? And she decided that hospitality would be the way that she would serve the mission of God in her situation. But how could she do this? She's a woman. How could she do this without being misunderstood by her husband and the other men in the neighborhood? How could she do this? So a woman or a mother on a mission is not just perceptive and generous, but she is also wise. And so she said, I am going to lobby my husband. And so she comes in a very tactful manner and brings the subject up at home. Says, there is this man I see around, passes by here every so often. I think that this is a man of God, and here is my suggestion. We can support his ministry by doing an additional room. This was a wealthy family. We'll do an additional room, an extension or a guest room. That's what we'll call it today. An queue. That's what we'll call it today. And can we build something, fit in a bed, a table, and a lamp, so that when he is passing by here with his servant, they can stop by and they can be sleeping here and resting. But she actually started by inviting him for a meal. The way you would invite somebody who is passing by and you think they're hungry or thirsty, you invite them for a meal. So she did her due diligence. She didn't do it just hurriedly or in a risky manner. She started by due diligence and then perceptively observed him for a while, went to the next step of inviting him for a meal. went to the next step of now saying, we can actually host him right here in our home. So that is a woman on a mission who says, I may not go to where this man is going, but I can be a blessing to the ministry of this man. But what was God doing as this woman went on busy to serve the Missio Dei by supporting the prophet? What was God doing? Some very interesting thing happening in verse 11, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 11. One day when Elisha came, he went up to his room and lay down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, call the Shunammite. So he called her, and she stood before him. Elisha said to him, tell her, you have gone to all this trouble for us. Now what can be done for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or commander of the army? Now she replied, I have a home among my own people. What can be done for her? Elisha asked. Gehazi said, she has no son, and her husband is old. Now remember that she had not shared this matter with the prophet. But the prophet is reciprocating to her generosity and is wondering, what can we do? She has gone to great extents. And so he offers several things. Can we speak to the king on your behalf? What about the general? And the woman is listening and said, no, you don't have to do any one of those things. I am well provided for. I stay here among my people. I have a home here. And remember, the earlier passage says, a well-to-do woman. So this is proof that whatever she was doing, the motives were correct and godly, because a woman on a mission or a mother on a mission will check her motives of action. What is driving me to support this person? Is it because I have liked him physically? Have I fallen in love with him? Or is it because I believe he is a mission person, a prophet with a word of God for the people, and I know he is genuine, and so I have no strings attached as I support and I serve the mission that this man is serving. So her motive of inviting Elisha was clean. She had no strings attached, and she did not expect to be paid. She did not have other things in her mind. It was purely ministry to the mission of God through the prophet. You can go on and pursue that discussion even further as you think about that. But God saw her need that she had not even shared. And Gehazi said, I noticed that this woman has no son. And right there, Elisha prophesied, by this time next year, you will be holding a child in your hands. And of course, she just giggled and laughed and said, no, let my Lord not bother me. Don't lie to me. I know myself. I know that my husband is old. Don't go that direction. But in her heart, she knew that she needed and wanted a baby and would have wished to have a baby, perhaps when she was a little younger and her husband was a little younger. By the grace of God, to cut the long story short, a year later, she actually had a son. And this son was in her hands, and she praised the Lord very much. But during one of those sessions, and I'm rushing through this particular passage, her son got sick. Her son got sick, and he was busy with the father in the farm. And the story is very interesting. But let me not go ahead of myself and say that the process of motherhood is complicated. It involves many emotions, challenges, but also many blessings that are too detailed for men, ordinary men like myself, to actually understand fully. Not because we cannot understand, but just because we are wired differently. And we see a little bit of that in verse number 18 of our passage. In this verse, number 18, the man was working in the farm with this son. And then he started complaining, the young man's complaining, my head, I have a headache. And the man, as I would have done, would say, well, take the boy to the mother. You find that in verse number 18. The child grew, and one day he went out to his father, who was with the reapers. They were harvesting. He said to his father, my head. And his father told the servant, carry him to his mother. After the servant had lifted up him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and then shut the door and went out. Now, this is what I would have done. I mean, we are in the farm, and we are busy harvesting, and the boy has a little headache, and I would say, son, I think you are exerting yourself too much. So go home to your mom. Your mom will handle that. Basically, I would assume it's just a little cold. He has worked too hard. The mother will take care, as she has always done. The mother will take care of that. And on this, it's like, mpeleke kwa mama yake. Peleka kwa mama yake. Peleka kijana kwa mama yake. Now, I want to be kind to the men, and I know that in other sectors, we may not be so lucky as to have that kindness. But I would imagine that this is just an innocent statement that meant perhaps my boy just needs a little break. I have been with him here, teaching him how to reap, to harvest. Now let him go home and rest. So it isn't that the man did not care about the boy. No, now I am just trying to be a generous man to my fellow men. But in another setting, this mpeleke kwa mama yake can also have another meaning. It can have a meaning like, don't pretend here that you're having a headache. Just go home, go to your mother. In fact, you're just like your mother. Never coming to help with the reaping process, lazy. Just go. Don't pretend here. Go home to your mother. This kwenda nyumbani to your mother could be loaded, but you remember I started by being generous to us, but it could actually be loaded. And from the way I grew up, where I grew up over those years, and my age mates whose mothers and fathers are of that generation, that is not news. It's not news because the man of the home was strong, and you could even say mean, and that is what being a man was supposed to look like. You needed to be tough and strong and tell everybody off who didn't appear to be hardworking. And anything that was bad belonged to your wife. Anything that was good belonged to your like. And that was the disparity. And sometimes the gap widened and widened. And this is a warning to my fellow men, that when that gap widens and the relationship between you and the children is weak, and it is stronger with the children and the mother, what you sow at that early age is what you might reap when you grow a little older. You have no relationship with your children because you became a man in their early years, a man, so you isolated yourself from them. As for me, where I grew up, I literally hid myself when I had him coming. And then, of course, when you grow older, things become even worse. You might be even more isolated. Now this time, by both the mother and the children, and probably that is what you planted. You're just harvesting what you may have planted. But I pray that that does not happen to us. But back to the boy. The headache got worse, and he died. In whose hands? In the hands of the mother. As I say, that motherhood can be very complicated. It's the mothers who are left with the children when particularly when they are small. It's the mothers who breastfeed. It's the mothers who carry the child for 9 months. That is why it is terrible when children who grow up demean their mothers, call them names, refuse to support them, or think that they are useless. That is a way of attracting the curse of a mother. Or a father who doesn't appreciate that process, doesn't see the fatigue that a mother gets every time when the child is hungry, they go to the mother. When they need to go to school, sometimes they are taken by the mother. When the child, this particular one, has a headache, is with the mother, dies in the hands of the mother, and the husband will come to learn this much, much later. There's something to note here, that when the child died, this lady didn't even tell the husband. I don't know why. We can only speculate, but let's not speculate too much. She didn't tell the husband. Instead, she laid the child's body on the bed of the man of God, the prophet, and asked the husband for a donkey to go. She's not even explaining. He is asking a few questions, but she is in a hurry. She goes to where the man of God was to explain. This was a miracle child, and the man who prophesied about this child, and the mother warned him not to bring pleasantries to her life. This is the one who would have to hear about this story. And we will not go too far beyond that on that. But are there lessons we can learn from the Shunammite woman about a mother on a mission? I hope so. But let me go to another woman who lived around the same time. In fact, Jezebel, for that is her name, lived and served during the time of Elijah and Elisha, the two prophets. So the Shunammite woman and Jezebel would be around the same season. The story of Jezebel is introduced to us in 1 Kings chapter 16. You could actually call her Sister Jez. But 1 Kings chapter 16, verse number 29. In the 38th year of Asa king of Judah, Ahab son of Omri became king of Israel, and he reigned in Samaria over Israel 22 years. Ahab son of Omri did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. He not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam son of Nebat, but he also married Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and worship him. He set up an altar for Baal in the temple of Baal that he built in Samaria. Ahab also made an Asherah pole and did more to arouse the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than did all the kings of Israel before him. In Ahab's time, Hiel of Bethel rebuilt Jericho. He laid its foundations at the cost of his firstborn son, Abiram, and he set up its gates at the cost of his youngest son, Segub, in accordance with the word of the Lord spoken by Joshua, son of Nun. Now, 1 Kings 21, and I'm in a hurry to read this. 1 Kings 21, verse 23. And also concerning Jezebel, the Lord says, dogs will devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Dogs will eat those belonging to Ahab who die in the city, and the birds will feed on those who die in the country. Verse 25. There was never anyone like Ahab who sold himself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord, urged on by Jezebel his wife. He behaved in the vilest manner by going after idols like the Amorites the Lord drove out before Israel. So enter Sister Jez. Jezebel was a daughter of a priest who was also a king. His name was Ethbaal. He ruled over the coastal Phoenician cities of Tyre and Sidon. And if you think about your map of Palestine, it's in Mediterranean Sea, right up, you have two cities, Tyre and Sidon. Now that area is Lebanon. Tradition has it that her marriage to Ahab was actually politically designed. It was a deliberate plan by her father to adulterate Israel. This intermarriage would cause the Baal, the worshipper, in fact the priests of Baal and Asherah, to influence Israel and draw Israel away from Yahweh and begin to worship those idols. Did he succeed? Yes, he succeeded. But Jezebel as an individual, now that is Jezebel as the daughter of a priest king. Jezebel as an individual was a powerful, highly gifted leader in her own rights. Very powerful, strong, wise, independent. And she is depicted also as sexually immoral woman, a free type, the free type, sexually immoral woman. In fact, you could say he's an archetype of everything negative about women. In one of the movies that some of you may be watching on KTN, on Jezebel, and this is based on history and a bit of tradition, a little exaggerated of course, but Jezebel, and a little bit of speculation, but Jezebel is depicted as a woman who even takes the authority of her husband. She actually sits on the throne, takes the leadership of what would be called a weak husband, and begins to give orders, evil orders. So Jezebel was also on a mission. She was a woman on a mission, but an evil mission. In fact, she gives birth in that movie to a son, and she has no time for the son. She doesn't see motherhood as a mission. She's in a hurry to go to look for other suitors and to be destructive. She kills. She orders people to be killed. She actually orders the killing of the prophets of God, many of them. And you can go on and on about this Jezebel. And what a contrast we have between Sister Jez and the Shunammite woman. What a contrast. Let me now summarize all that. And as you notice, I have been brief there. Let me summarize all that in a few points that will help us appreciate women or mothers on a mission, the do's and the don'ts of mothers on a mission, and the role that men can play. Number one, we are all called by God to advance His kingdom wherever we are. The Missio Dei of God. You and I are part of the mission of God. Every one of us, irrespective of our status, mothers, fathers, youth, children, we are called to do that. Secondly, motherhood is a tremendous blessing. And so is fatherhood, of course. We have the privilege of co-creating with God. When a child is born, you see someone in your image. Imagine that. In your image. Just like God creates us in His own image, you and I as parents co-create with God. We see someone in our own image. The nose is like the mother, the ears like the father, they behave like us. They are in our image. Thirdly, parenting is not an inferior undertaking. It is a blessing to bring up children, and this is a mission on its own. It's a separate mission. And Catherine talked about it earlier. The privilege of instilling kingdom values that will last in the days of adulthood of this child, that privilege is crucial. And it needs to be taken seriously, and all of us who are not mothers, the fathers, the elder siblings, must support this important calling of a mother and be part of it. Fourthly, we notice that in the life of Jezebel, we see great opportunities of positive influence that were wasted. Perhaps misused or abused may be better descriptors of the life mission of Jezebel. Highly influential. But all those opportunities of influence were wasted, misused, or abused. Number 5, Mothers or women in general and in high places can bring their motherly influence to the offices that they hold and they change things for better. And they don't need to do it like men. They just need to do it like them. That is why Suluhu should never try to be a Magufuli. She is just her, and she brings all the positive values of motherhood to a nation without any compromise and without any apologies. So are you a woman chief executive? Just do it like you. And do it, bring all those wonderful values. And mothers can do that wherever God calls them. And we as fathers, we need to encourage mothers and mothers to do their mission of God, their missio Dei in those high places. Number 6, mothers on a mission use their power responsibly. Every place of power, and you could think about Margaret Thatcher in those days. She was called the Iron Lady. I don't know why they called her the Iron Lady. Perhaps she was strong and powerful and didn't bend. But I would like to say that we have to bring our power to bear responsibly. We must not usurp the power of our husbands or those others in authority, as we see Jezebel doing. Jezebel sits on the throne of Ahab, takes the power of a leader, of her boss or her husband, and uses it badly. She orders the killing of prophets. She orders the killing of Naboth, a poor man who had a small piece of land next to the palace. And this greedy king called Ahab wants to grab that piece of land to become a kitchen garden. Who would be using the kitchen garden? Jezebel, of course. Jezebel misuses her power and her authority. Her power to mobilize. This was a highly gifted woman who had the power to mobilize. In that movie that we've been watching, she uses her power to mobilize the army. She infiltrates the generals there and does destructive work in Israel, abusing her power to mobilize. Number 7, mothers on a mission will break off from ungodly ancestral practices. Jezebel was a daughter of a priest king. So she brings these values of her mother, of her father, into Israel, a place where God, the true God, is worshipped. A woman on a mission, a mother on a mission, will look her ancestral background and say, I saw this happen to my mother. I saw my mother beating my father. I am not bringing this into my home. This is evil, off with it. But I saw my mother being generous. I will bring generosity into my own home. So a mother with a mission will break off ungodly values from the past and bring in godly values into her family. Number 8, mothers with a mission are perceptive and passionate. They will perceive what is right. They will be passionate. And number 9, mothers on a mission do not give up from fatigue and from abuse. As I said earlier, being a mother is a very tiring job and a thankless job sometimes. You work so hard, you cook so hard, and yet you don't always get the compliments that you need to get. It's so easy to throw in the towel. It's so easy to hate even the children that you have given birth to. When they are thankless, when they begin to throw their weight around you, they don't appreciate you, it's so easy to give up. But the Shunammite woman will not give up. She will support the child. She will think about the medication of the child. She will go to look for the welfare of the child. Even if the husband is not into it, she will do it. But I'd like to just make a note there as I come to conclude. Going back to the Shunammite woman, we said she was tactful and wise. She brought the subject of building an eschew very wisely so that she gets the buy-in and the support of her husband. She did not say, well, I know I have prayed about this man. I know he's a man of God. And even if you don't believe it, me, I have fasted. I have prayed. He is a man of God. God has revealed to me that we must build a home here for this man. And if you don't want to do it, I will do it myself with my own money. Of course, the SQ would still have been built. I can hear the laughter of my friend Manotti there. Thank you, Manotti. Now you can relax. So the SQ would still have been built. Elisha would still have come, but there would be a wedge between Elisha and the husband. A godly woman, godly wife will not bring a war at home so that they support or she supports someone out there. She is tactful, she is wise, she will be humble, and the mission will be accomplished. Number 10, and finally, a woman on a mission will take charge. A woman on a mission will not sit there and see the home going to the dogs because she has no support from the children or from her husband. You may have unhealthy relationships, but if you have a husband who doesn't care about the situation at home, a godly woman will not leave the family alone. She will work hard. She will take the children to hospital. She will serve whatever she can do. She will pray into the kingdom, her husband. And I pray, as I conclude, that God will enable us as women and men and children on this Mother's Day and also a time of mission to encourage and support mothers on a mission. And may God bless us all. And I do pray that we may have picked one or two things that relate to us and to our families.